Marguerite is such an interesting character for me because she didn't really live in any era or any place, and I wanted to keep her that way. So I really based her on like sort of 1930s sort of masculine movie stars. It was hard to really pigeonhole her as a certain thing because I didn't want her to be recognizable as a certain like, oh, I know who this character is. So I think me and Grant really worked to make her unpredictable, and I think that the scenes that I had with Kevin and with Chase really like demonstrated that.
I do. I mean, I love
his scumbag.
Yeah, sometimes scumbags get what they want. He's every guy who's had every opportunity and no real consequences in his life, and he's sort of gotten by on his perceived charm and whatever, but he's probably mediocre at his job, and there's a lot of that. But I think at least in not just in New York, but in bigger cities and people with a certain amount of wealth, it's like a kind of insidious group of, especially men, white men, frankly.
The overlying theme of the movie is sort of mixed in with so many other themes of what it's almost like an homage to New York in a way, and society and different time periods, and the whole debutante in different classes. I think that was what he was trying to get at, and I think he did that beautifully.
There was a nice part about playing somebody who had no boundaries. If he wants to, grab someone while they're walking by, or if he wants to tell someone off, it just doesn't occur to him. If he wants to spit on a homeless guy, it's not a foreshadowed thing. He just sort of behaves like an animal, and there are many people like that, and so that's the role Chad kind of services. He's this uninhibited animal. Chase. So I had signed on to do the movie with Grant, and we'd read a bunch of actors, and I'd known Chase for a really long time, but Chase he looks like somebody he looks like he might be a Chad. When you just look at him and you're like, this guy has everything you could ever want. He's the most handsome guy in the world. He's very friendly, and
he has a vulnerability.
But he has this, for people who know him personally, he's actually quite quiet and thoughtful, and insecure is not the word, but he's just really thoughtful and really sweet, and Stan kind of needed that quality, and I'd hung out with him enough that, obviously I told Grant about him, and he's like, oh, but he doesn't look like a guy who's had a hard time with anything in his life. But then once he met him, and clearly once he saw what he was doing, and frankly I think it's the best Chase has ever been. As I watched what he was doing, I was just so impressed by. Yeah. He's just so there, and it was the first time I'd seen something that I was like, oh, that's exactly who Chase is, sort of at his core, which is he has this boyish quality of being able to be sort of easily maneuvered by people that I think is so charming and so great for this film.
I think a lot of these movies that have quote-unquote defined generations and talked about what youth is like in those generations have taken off. And, Breakfast Club is probably the best example in the John Hughes films. I think Easy Rider is an older example. And I think that there have been a lot of millennial movies, but the way they've dealt with that millennial generation has been a little overt, a lot of on-screen texting, very kind of obvious things, music concerts, that sort of stuff. And here I really wanted to try to capture more about the sentiment of the generation and certain common traits that the generation shares with each other about emotions and how they view jobs and how they view working. And building a young cast to do that, I think, is the most successful way to do that, like The Breakfast Club does. So for me, it was important to create this ensemble cast where you really felt it was an ensemble. It wasn't just Chase and Kevin. You had a bunch of people, because I feel that those movies end up being the most successful at expressing that sentiment you're trying to get across.
couple in real life.
Yeah.